Hello everyone, welcome back again to edX Pixel Expo 8 monthly webinar series, Global Webcasts. And hope you enjoy the last session with the mermaiding in East Asia, catch the trend and be the next mermaid star. Today we convene over a united cause, which is of course our love for diving and also for the ocean. edX Pixel 8 monthly virtual event 2021 celebrates the diversity of the oceans and its and its diving landscape. With a series of events happening on the 8th of every month, with an aim to bring trending dialogues and also deep-rooted tales on the pulse of scuba diving, and also with inspirational guests and insightful stories. And for the session this July, we are of course focusing on East Asia, and we have today a session focusing on our very first Ocean Hero of the Month. For July 2021 is none other than Gary Stokes from Hong Kong/UK, and he's of course the Director of Operation for Oceans Asia. So bringing the topic of the session today titled The State of the Oceans and the Sustainable Seafood Myth, Gary is born in the UK and was raised in the Mediterranean, where his love affair with the ocean first formed, and he has been living in Asia for the past 31 years, where he has worked as a professional photographer and also a diving instructor amongst other careers. He has become an effective ocean advocate due to his non-compromise approach. Gary previously held the position of Asia Director for Sea Shepherd Conservation Society, a position that he held for nearly 5 years. He has spent the past 20 years investigating and exposing the shark fin industry, gaining international media coverage for the cause, as well as working with airlines and shipping lines to shut down shark fin shipping routes. When not exposing the shark fin industry, he can be found conducting the wildlife crime, as well as in the movies A Plastic Ocean, Seaspiracy, pardon me, and also the soon-to-be released movie with Eli Roth titled Fin. So once again, welcome Gary, and thank you for your time to be here. Herewith, I'd like to pass the session over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for having me. God, I miss coming to Singapore for ADEX. Doing it on Zoom is never quite the same.
That's right, Gary. We miss you a lot too.
So yeah, I was. Let me just share this screen, and then I can get this one up and running. So yes, here we are. As most of you know, obviously my passion is with the sharks. So I was just going to give a quick update on where we're at currently globally with some good news, some not so great news, but and some news that you can help with. So yeah, globally, as many of you probably know, we have a global crisis, a shark crisis, where between 73 to up to 273 million sharks die each year. I know that seems like an astronomical number, and sort of people think, no, I mean, we go diving all the time. We never see that many sharks. A few years back, one of my last missions I did with Sea Shepherd, I actually ran a mission to East Timor, and we went and hunted down 15 shark boats that were operating in East Timor. Those boats alone were killing 80,000 sharks a month, which over those 15 boats added up to almost 1 million sharks a year. That was 15 ships. And when we actually look at the global fishing fleet worldwide, it's not hard to see how we could easily get to 273 million or more. Obviously, it's very hard. It's almost a mission just to get these numbers, which is why they are so vague, with some saying 73, some saying 273. I mean, it could be anywhere in between. But one thing is for sure, sharks are majorly important in the ecosystem, but they are also, incredibly threatened. I mean, 1 in 4 sharks are now endangered and threatened with extinction. And that's mainly because scientists have been saying that, you know, we are overfishing them 30 times faster than they can actually reproduce. So, you know, those are pretty scary numbers. But there is some good news. So just a month or so ago, the UK had a petition out, and that was led by Shark Guardian and supported by lots of other NGOs. To ban shark fin imports into the UK, and the government did actually pass that bill. And yeah, obviously all these bills mean nothing unless they have enforcement. But this one seems interesting because it is you have to bring the whole shark in to the country, where there was a loophole before where you could bring in 20 kilos in your luggage when you arrive at the airport for personal consumption. So 20 kilos of shark fin is a hell of a lot of personal consumption. And one of the things that we were highlighting was the duty on that, because you're only allowed to bring up to 350 euros of goods in duty free, and 20 kilos of shark fin could be way in excess of that. So hopefully the tax man also helped on that one. But the main thing is that they have to bring in the shark, the whole carcass, and export the whole carcass. So there is no more sacks of fins coming in and out of the UK. And it's interesting, we'll see more as it develops as to how that will be enforced within the country. I mean, obviously, if they catch dogfish in the North Sea and they chop the fin off, will they be able to sell it to local restaurants in London or anywhere like that? That's to be seen how that will be enforced. Also, how they're going to handle existing stock that's already in the UK. As we've seen here in Hong Kong with like the rhino and the elephant ivory, we still have it in the shops here, even though it was banned back in 1986, I think it was. And then just saying, oh, it's all pre-CITES stock. So it'll be interesting to see how the UK handles that, but it's a great step forward for the sharks. And another one that we have coming up is in the US. So the US Senate on World Ocean Day passed the Shark Fin Sales Elimination Act, which is huge. You know, obviously the US is a major player in the shark fin industry, both importing and exporting. I mean, I've had shipments that we've found here in the streets of Shenzhen coming from Florida, and you know, we're also tracking shipments that are going into the US, sometimes even into states where there are actual bans. So, you know, there's a lot of traction there going back and forth. And hopefully with this bill, at the moment, it's passed the Senate. Now it has to go to the House of Representatives. So any of our American colleagues that are watching, get on to your representatives. We need that passed through. And then President Biden will then hopefully then sign that one in. And if that comes into effect, that's a huge, huge player out of the way. And another huge player, which, oh, hang on. Let me just go back onto that. The reason why, I knew I had a slide in there for something. The reason why the US is so, you know, the bill has managed to get through is because of all the data. And the data that we have on the shark fin industry is so sketchy. So on this side, just for the reporting side, so the FAO in 2007 had a record of 1,012 metric tons coming into the US. NOAA actually only recorded 28.8. And the similar one was in 2011, 295 tons versus 38. So on that one, NOAA was actually higher than what, you know, than what it was before. So most of this is down to mislabeling and the false declarations. I mean, we see them all the time here. Shark fins are being put into containers and it's just labeled as dried seafood, marine product and things like that. And that's where the problem lies. These customs officials are not actually looking in these containers because it's something of such a low, it's so far down the food chain when it comes to enforcement and what they're actually looking for, that when it says dried seafood, it's just passed through, very rarely checked. What we did have, though, was here in Hong Kong, we found these 2 containers that came in on Maersk, and we found them. We contacted Maersk, and Maersk had a embargo on shark fin, and they were very upset, of course, finding out they were being smuggled. And sure enough, when I said to them, I'm sure it would have been labeled something else, something like dried seafood, and sure enough, it was. So, you know, this is the main problem. We know sharks are getting wiped out globally, but the shark fin industry is actually just deceiving everybody by just smuggling, basically, and that's what it is. It's smuggling. When you put something on there with a false declaration of what it actually is, you're smuggling it in, sometimes to evade duty taxes as well. Is classed as a luxury goods. But yes, another major player, and something anybody watching this or who has friends in Europe, we really need some help. There is a citizens initiative, and for this, let me just emphasize, you have to be a citizen of the EU, but they are also pushing to get a fin ban across the whole of the EU. And they have quotas for each of the countries, and only France and Portugal have actually reached their target quota of people who have signed up and signed their petition. And I know there's lots of these petitions flying around, but some of them are very key, and some of them, obviously, as we saw with the UK one, do work. So please, if you can, if you're an EU passport holder, get on there. These are the countries listed here that are still way below. We're only at 240,000. We need 1 million signatures for this. And that's by the end of January. So, you know, we have a little bit of time, but we really need to start cranking this up. So any NGOs out there who can start pushing this, this isn't our initiative, we're just supporting it. But yeah, obviously the EU is a major player. I mean, people are always surprised when I say that Spain is one of the largest exporters of shark fin, often the largest shark fin exporter to China. An EU nation, all these sharks are being caught with taxpayer subsidies. So yeah, if you're a taxpayer in the EU, you're likely funding the shark fin industry. So please get on and sign. So recently, obviously we had this little documentary that came out called Seaspiracy. And I was lucky enough to be involved here in Hong Kong with Ali and Lucy when they came. And we spent 2 weeks walking around Shenzhen, filming and getting chased and all sorts. I mean, there was so much footage. I wish we had got more in there, but we had a lot of fun, opened a lot of eyes. We also filmed quite a bit of the plastic area of the film. We filmed a lot of that here. But the main thing about Seaspiracy was the messaging and the way it has really shaken up the fishing industry and the public as well. Obviously, I've had so many messages of people saying they're not going to eat seafood anymore, which is fantastic. Obviously, one of the messages was for, you know, everybody needs to stop eating fish. Well, I think that's been misconstrued a bit. What that means is pretty much anybody who's wealthy enough to be watching Netflix has a choice. So we live in a world where we actually have a choice. When we go to the supermarket, we can choose what we wish to buy. Sustenance fishermen in the Philippines or in West Africa, they don't have a choice. But they weren't ever part of the problem. They were always sustainable in probably the only sense of the word sustainable that makes any sense. But yeah, so when you see the movie and it's that we all need to stop eating fish, that's targeted at the wealthier nations and the people who, like I say, have a Netflix subscription and can make that choice. But obviously, one of the things that we looked at a lot on there was obviously the overfishing. And let me just see. So 1 in 5 fish. So 1 in 5 fish in the supermarket was actually caught illegally or unreported or unregulated. So when people think of illegal fishing, they always think of the illegal part. They don't think of the unregulated or the unreported. And this is becoming a major threat. Governments are all starting to take notice now. They are stepping up and really starting to take this very seriously, because it's food security, and also can destabilize localized areas. And with 80% of the global fisheries fully exploited or depleted or in a state of collapse, obviously we are in dire straits. And I hate this to sound like a doom and gloom talk. It's not, but we are in a very serious state with the oceans. Whether it's climate change, plastic pollution, or the overfishing, those three really are having a massive effect on the state of our ocean, which is our life support system. And that's one thing that I think a lot of people forget. The ocean does provide most of the oxygen that we breathe. So yeah. When it comes to overfishing, I've got some fun ones coming up in a moment. We're not just fishing just for us to eat. We're actually fishing and using that fish to feed animals, livestock that will be grown and fed to us. In fact, 36% of all fish caught ends up as animal feed, which is a little bit surprising. 56% of that goes to aquaculture, to farm fish. And it was interesting to see just this week, Argentina were the first country to ban salmon farms, which is very liberating. And I hope we start seeing that further around the world. But yeah, so 20% goes to pigs. We've got 12% poultry and 12% other. Yeah, I always find this one quite funny. So pigs are now one of the largest oceanic predators. Now, if you sort of told that to me when I was a kid at school, I would have thought you were absolutely crazy. But they are now eating 7 million tons of fish every single year. And that's just, it just shows how we are affecting the world that we live in such a bizarre and twisted way. Another one is cats. Our domestic cats eat 2.4 million tons of fish. And yet the North Atlantic still only consumes 300,000 tons. And, I always look at this and I sort of think, yeah, but cats eat fish. But cats don't actually like water, for starters. So they're not exactly their main prey species. If they find fish washed up on the beach, I'm sure they'd eat it. But I think we've been raised in this world of sort of Tom and Jerry in the old cartoons as kids, where cats eat fish. Apart from certain species that will actually go and hunt in rivers, possibly, but the domestic cat certainly doesn't. Now, when we look at, I'll see if this video works, but when we talk about sustainable fishing, and one of the things in Seaspiracy, and we'll go into that in a moment with the labeling. This is some footage I've obtained recently. Let's see if it runs. And I won't play it for too long, but this is a purse seiner operating in Asia. And it was catching, obviously, tuna in its nets, but also caught these pilot whales. Or we believe they're pilot whales. We're still waiting to get them to identified. I'll stop that now because the sound. Or can I turn that down? There we go. So, yeah, so this purse seiner, sorry about the noise there. This purse seiner is basically setting its nets, and it sets these nets, these huge circular nets, draws a string at the bottom, and obviously everything inside that's caught, ends up in there. And we often see whale sharks getting caught, turtles, obviously shark, all non-target species. But these are the main vessels that are going out there and catching the massive amounts of tuna. that are needed. Obviously, this vessel was going from here. It ended up going to Thailand, where most of the tuna is smaller tuna that ends up being canned. Larger tuna ends up going straight directly to Japan. But these, we believe they're pilot whales. I'm still trying to get them correctly ID'd. But they were dead. There was about 4 of them in this. And these guys are obviously just trying to get them out because they don't want to end up with them on the deck where they won't be able to manhandle and get them off. So, sustainable fishing and these labels in Seaspiracy, MSC took a big hit, and justifiably so in my eyes. These labels are a great idea for sustainable. So when people go into the supermarket, they can just look for these little, logos, the blue tick, obviously with MSC, and they know that fish was caught sustainably. However, sadly, that's not always the case. And when it comes to sustainable seafood, in a layman's terms, we can break it down into 3 elements. Number 1 is no damage to the environment and minimal bycatch. So that's part 1. And a lot of the fishing vessels, not this one clearly, a lot of the fishing vessels do actually manage to target their species, and maybe they're not damaging the seabed. We've actually got records of some catching basking sharks and hauling up coral as well, and these were MSC vessels. So we're following up that in an investigation at the moment. But that's probably the easiest of the 3. The second one would be quotas, scientifically based set quotas by non-biased scientists. And I really emphasize that because a lot of these scientists, and as we saw with Seaspiracy, all these scientists who came out against the movie because they're paid by the fishing industry. So when the fishing industry say, well, we want to go and catch this animal, the scientists will come along, do a report, get paid for it, and then it's sustainable and everything's all good to go. So, and the other one is obviously governments. Governments have their trade deals with different countries, as you'll see in a minute with the example I'm about to show. The third one is probably the most important and probably the most unused, or that's not really the exact word, but the enforcement. Enforcement on the high seas is almost non-existent. Anything out of sight, out of mind. Nobody really cares about. The governments aren't going out there and doing it, and that's where my previous position with Sea Shepherd, they do an amazing job of actually still going out there and providing the eyes, and that's what it needs. We need people out there to actually see what's going on, and bring it to the attention of the world. I mean, this going on. This, I can't say where it is because we're still doing an investigation on it. But this was within Asia, and this is definitely not sustainable, and it's definitely not being enforced. But besides MSC, there is another, and I find their name probably the most ironic of all, Friend of the Sea. They are the world's largest eco label for sustainability. And Friends of the Sea, they really are amazing. If you saw the movie, you will see Ali ended up going after the Earth Island Institute. Well, Friends of the Sea is set up by the very same person who set up that. He set up both. But Friends of the Sea, I had an issue with when I was investigating in South Australia. South Australia, where suddenly I started seeing in Hong Kong all these bluefin tuna suddenly starting appearing on menus again, and bluefin tuna is critically endangered. And yet it was still, suddenly it started appearing on all the menus here after we had managed to get rid of it off of most of the menus. And when we started speaking to the chefs and the restaurant owners, that's when they came back and said, oh, no, this is sustainable. And they showed me this, and they showed me the logo, Friends of the Sea. Well, southern bluefin tuna is very much critically endangered. Of the 3 bluefin tuna species, it's the critically endangered, with the Mediterranean Atlantic being endangered, and currently the Pacific, I believe, is vulnerable, but it's about to be upgraded. Yeah, so southern bluefin tuna, critically endangered. Friends of the Sea basically say yes, it's okay. And when we look into it, in Port Lincoln, they have these ranches. And of course, when people see a ranch, they think, oh, it's farmed. It's, that's okay. That's, that's not wild caught. Well, these ranches are all wild caught. All the bluefin tuna is caught from the wild. They are caught as juveniles. They are young, and they are then fed a diet of pilchards and other small bait fish to fatten them up, ready for market to go to Japan. So these fish don't even get a chance to repopulate. Because of the clampdown on southern bluefin tuna, they are starting to come back a bit. They went down as much as 3% of their biomass from the 1960s. 3%. They're back now to, I believe, about 9 or 10. But yes, so the Friends of the Sea go and award them their Friends of the Sea certifiable sustainable tuna. And this guy, Paolo Bray, is the director. He's actually the guy who set up the Earth Island Institute's dolphin safe tuna. So it's all just to keep the money flowing and keep the fish being caught, keep these fishermen going out and making all the money they can. Meanwhile, the collapse of the ecosystem continues. And then, as I said, it's quite easy to see where the motivation comes from. The Australian government, $153.5 million of southern bluefin tuna. That was 2012. And now they've actually applied to increase the quota of a critically endangered species. And most of that was sent to Japan. So those are trade deals that the governments actually have, and they keep wiping out these tuna. But it's not just the tuna. MSC in the UK, they gave their Friends of the Sea, sorry, not MSC. Friends of the Sea also gave their accreditation to this pharmaceutical company, and they make these, the omega pills, and they're actually using, as you can see there, bluefin tuna, and that's Atlantic Mediterranean bluefin tuna, which is, as I said, endangered, and they're actually using that and putting that into omega-3 pills. And if you watch Seaspiracy, you realize we don't actually get omega-3 from the fish, we get it from the algae. So we don't even really need to be having the middleman. We should just really be having algae and just taking the omega-3 directly from algae. So, when it comes to the sustainable seafood myth, I like to sort of, I do put it out there, and I get challenged quite a lot, that there is no such thing as sustainable seafood wild caught at the moment. I've had people challenge me and say, oh, well, there's this place, and there was one guy from New Zealand came out and he said, oh yeah, but we have this fish from it's up in the mountains. It's about 1,000, 2,000 feet up a mountain. It's fed with stream water. It's this. I'm just like, come on, really? You really are grasping at straws. I mean, we're talking of commercial industrial scale fishing, and that is what is the biggest threat, I believe, to our oceans at the moment. So what have we got next? I'm actually raced through all this, so I do apologize. The other good news I have got, and I've been able to finally unveil, I spent 2 weeks filming with Eli Roth, who's an amazing guy, A-list Hollywood actor, movie director, big into horror movies. Did the movie, did Hostel. He was also in Inglourious Bastards. You would have seen him in there with a big baseball bat. Great guy who loves sharks. And Eli contacted, and we met up. We had a couple of weeks in Hong Kong going around and, really, really starting to uncover what was going on with the shark fin industry here. We had some really, really interesting meetings, but I don't want to spoil it too much because you'll better see it in the film. So we will have this film coming out on July 13th. It's coming out on Discovery Plus. Now, I'm not sure which countries can actually get that in Asia. I know it's going to be a bit of a challenge for me. I'm going to find it somehow, but I'm sure it'll be available and it'll be out. But yeah, so we have a trailer coming up, and I think if you can run the trailer, let me just stop the share thing.
¿Qué tiburón es?
It's right there. Can we let it go? Is it gonna kill it? Can we let it live? Oh my God. You can't blame the fishermen for trying to make a living.
Yeah, but you are not gonna be able to fish that many sharks in 10 years.
It's crazy. Growing up, I was obsessed with scary movies.
Hi there, it's me again, Eli Roth.
It's truly amazing when you can face your fears. And nothing scared me more than sharks. Sharks are a difficult subject because of the perception that sharks are these monsters that want to eat us. That's just not true.
The major threat today, without a doubt, is that sharks are being targeted for their fins, which is used for shark fin soup.
Everybody does blame China, but it's happening everywhere. The US is about the 7th biggest exporter of fins.
I care about the ocean. I'm traveling the world to understand what's happening. I have to expose the truth. Europeans are getting wealthy from it.
They make millions of dollars.
The powers behind it are so great.
I don't want to talk about this on camera.
This is totally out of fashion. If we stop the soup, are the sharks still going to get killed?
Hi.
Should we try and talk to those guys?
Just be prepared to be told to get out.
Well, who tipped them off we were in there?
This bucket of oil that you're holding in your hand produces shark liver oil that's used in cosmetics, face creams, moisturizers.
We're talking multi-millions of dollars.
If this is bothersome to some, don't watch.
I want to get on one of those boats. How difficult is that?
This is a huge business, and when you start meddling with it, accidents happen.
This is fucking crazy. This is the most terrifying film I've ever made. Without sharks, the planet can die.
There we go.
Wow. That's amazing, Finn. It's gonna go, I think, public in July 17, is that right?
July 13.
July 13.
Yeah, it's all part of
Okay.
Discovery Shark Week.
Ah, awesome. All right. So, Gary, we do have a couple of questions. And
good.
the first question is that, you have this really, I mean, all this time that we've known you, we always known you as a shark man. And, you have this deep passion for ocean, but a whole lot on shark. So, maybe, the first question would be, why shark? And also, is it something that sparked since the beginning, or as a child, or what's the story?
Yeah, no, I get asked that quite a lot. I mean, I personally, I just think sharks are just the coolest animals out there. When I'm diving and I see sharks, they strike a nerve in you that, I guess was placed there from growing up watching Jaws and, the stories that people hear. And, of all the fish in the ocean, they're the one that sort of perk you up and get your attention. But I guess the reason why I ended up fighting more for sharks is because of where I am. Yeah, I'm in the shark fin, ground zero of the shark fin industry. So when it came to what can I do, and that's what we all need to be looking at, is what individuals can do and where they suit best. Obviously, being here with all this shark fin industry going on, more than 50% coming through Hong Kong, that's where I can focus a lot of my attention. But I've also got another new love, and that's finless porpoises. So, it's not all just sharks. I do a lot of work with Dr. Lindsay Porter, Naomi Brannan, doing work on acoustics with our Chinese white dolphins here and the finless porpoises. And recently, the last year or so, I've been getting the first really good drone footage of finless porpoises so we can actually see their behavior. So it's not all just sharks, even though I wish it was sometimes. But yeah, I'm working with the porpoises and plastic, obviously. I'm just glad to be able to get off of doing talks about face masks and me holding up the face masks, because that took up about a year of my life. So what was the next question?
Have you always been so Gary, have you always been doing marine conservation work all through your life, or what were you doing before you actually adopt this current mission of yours?
Yeah, well, I was in food and beverage, so I worked as a bartender for a long time, a flair bartender, chucking bottles around and living the Tom Cruise sort of cocktail dream. And then I ended up in hotels and things like that. But then I was also, I then went into photography, and I had my own company. I was doing corporate photography, and at the same time took up diving. And then obviously the two sort of married each other, and the camera came underwater with me, and then started documenting, things that I was seeing, the degradation that's happening just in our lifetime. And then obviously it sort of snowballed out of control. To where we are right now.
Okay, we do have another question. So just now you were sharing some PowerPoint about shark fins and actions being taken, by countries, by regions. So you mentioned that in the UK and the US, they do come up with such bills, and for EU, they are working on getting further signatures to get shark fins being banned on that particular region. So which other countries, right, in your opinion, that should also focus towards those kind of initiatives? And also in Asia itself, would it be happening anytime soon where people would want to be finally aware and to act on it? What are your thoughts?
I think I wish we could get shark fin bans going in all the different Asian countries. I think it's going to be a lot bigger challenge to do that here. In countries such as the US, obviously, it's not a primary concern to the citizens. I think it was something like 8 out of 10 Americans said they were behind a ban in a recent survey. I don't think we would see the same here. And also, I don't, I'm very protective of Asia online when people just have a go at Asia for killing everything. I mean, yes, we are certainly playing a very big role in that. But everybody's killing the sharks, and it's all around the world. So, I mean, if we can get EU, that would be huge. The EU one, I think, is the biggest one of all because of the Spanish fleet. But around the region, and we had China banned at state banquets, and China is really clamping down on austerity cuts. And, you're not getting these celebrities now going on TikTok and showing off their wealth and how extravagant they are because they're going to prison for it. Whether people agree with that or not, I don't, it's up to them. But we are seeing these measures coming in. So I think it's in different forms. We're going to see it, fading out.
Do you think the youth plays a very important role, and how should NGOs, NPOs, governments should work closely with youth in order to address
Sorry, you cut out then. So working with youths, absolutely, the youth and the next generation play the biggest role of all. I recently I was doing a talk in a Chinese school here, and it was funny because I got home, and that evening I had a phone call, and it was from this Chinese gentleman who I thought, oh dear. He's like, "Are you Mr. Gary? You came and talked to my son's school." And I said, yes. And I thought he was going to, be angry at me for talking about, a white person coming in and talking about Asian cultures. But it was the opposite. He actually said my son was so enthralled with it. He came home and was talking to him about it. And he's told him, "Daddy, you can't have shark fin anymore." And he said, "I just want to let you know, I have 4 companies with over 1,000 staff, and we're going to stop shark fin soup because of my son." So when the youth, they play a major role, and hopefully the governments will start listening to them. We have seen it here in Hong Kong, the reduction of shark fin consumption, for example, because the young people getting married just don't want it at their weddings anymore. All they have to do, the only resistance they have is their parents and how it's seen in public. And as soon as that image changes from it being, aren't we wealthy, to aren't we a bunch of shark killers, in as many ways. Obviously, showing extravagance, you can show it in other ways if you want to show your wealth. If that's what's important to you at the wedding. But the youth, definitely, the youth play a big part, and I wish they would be listened to more.
Gary, you have children of your own, and how would you normally educate your babies to love the ocean more?
Well, I have 2, Jack and Amber. They're the motivation that keeps me going, because as anybody who's in this industry or in this field, it can get very, very depressing very, very quickly. And you do have days where you sort of think, why am I doing this? Really, nobody really cares. They're just carrying on as normal. And it's only when I look at them, I go, that's why I'm doing it. And it's a selfish way, really, because, I want to be able to look at them in the eye and say, I tried my best. Now, whether we succeed or fail, at least I tried. And that's on a selfish way. I guess it's kind of an ego way. It's just, that's the way I want to be with my kids. I don't want them looking at me and going, you knew this was happening and you did nothing. I think the alternative is, well, we tried, whether it worked or not, But I take the kids out on the boat all the time. Jack was driving the boat at 5 years old, our rib, and he still does now. We were out collecting ghost nets last weekend. And they're very much involved with that. And it's really encouraging when I hear back from their teachers at school, and they're sort of like, anything environmental, these kids are just blowing the others out of the park. It's great. And they take the lead, and it gives them that confidence at school as well, because a lot of these school projects are, going along the way. So, I mean, we're all talking about the UN sort of guidelines, SDG 14. Life beneath the waves, and they're all doing that at school. So we're getting our own homework in at the moment. So after this, I'm going out on the boat in about an hour with the kids. So.
Oh, that sounds fun. Well, here in Singapore, we just stay in our flats and not be able to go anywhere. Okay, so I have another question. You spend a lot of time with Sea Shepherd and also with now Ocean Asia. So, you being the guardian of the oceans, have you seen a lot of things? In your whole career span of an experience, what is there any one moment that you've seen that, really get you and, like it's just something that you can't erase off? Is there any such moments?
What, as in a bad moment or a shocking thing I've seen, or something beautiful and stunning?
It could be anything, in your opinion.
Well, there's been certain moments that have really sort of galvanized and made it sort of important for, sort of driven it home why. I mean, I was filming whales in Tonga, for example, and the whales go to Tonga to give birth, and they nurse their young before they retreat back to Antarctica and feed. And normally the mothers are there with their newborn calves, and they normally have an escort that goes with them. And on this one morning, we had one whale without an escort. So the mother was exhausted, just trying to stay awake and keep a watch over her baby. And we came along, and she came over to the boat, and after about 10 minutes of hanging with us, she realized we weren't a threat, and she actually left the baby with us and went down to about 15 meters and had a sleep, leaving us to babysit a humpback, a baby humpback who was frolicking around and sort of playing. And then she came back up, and the baby went over and suckled, and then went underneath her chin and just sat there under her chin. And she came over and was just looking at us, and there was me and my two friends with me, and her eye was just looking at me, looking at him, looking at her, looking back, and it was just this connection. And it was incredible when you think one species trusted another. And that was actually the year that they were going down to Japan had announced they were going to kill 50 humpbacks in Antarctica. And that really fired me up to think that that mum and calf could be getting harpooned that year. So that was when I looked up what to do about it and came across Captain Paul Watson and Sea Shepherd. And that following year, I was in front of a harpoon ship in a small Zodiac trying to, sort of block them and stop them killing anything. And that was all from that moment with that whale. And it was a special moment because it's obviously set me off on a whole new course. And they didn't kill any humpbacks that year either, so that was good.
Yeah, that is great news actually. And I mean, like, to have such a connection without words and from another species, that must be, I don't know, it's one experience, I must say. All right, we have one last question, and it's also another opinionated question. So, in your opinion, what is considered sustainable? And if sustainable is not the right way to go, based on like what was being covered by Seaspiracy, what to go about saving the ocean?
I lost that last bit then, but I think I guessed what it was. So
the idea.
yeah, as you can imagine, so the problem with this whole buzzword of sustainable seafood, it's being thrown around now and used as a tool to just carry on doing what we were doing by a lot of the industry. And a lot of the industry are just being lazy. The food and beverage industry, they can just get away with it just by putting out sustainable seafood, and it's being used as a marketing tool to help increase seafood sales. Now, what we need to be doing is reducing our seafood consumption. The more we can go to a plant-based diet, the better. I don't expect everybody to go vegan overnight at all. It would be nice, but to reduce as much as you can. If you have seafood 4 times a week, have it twice a week. You know, you've already halved your impact. If you can make it a quarter, it's even better. But yeah, just to reduce, with the ultimate goal to having as little footprint on the planet as we can. So when it comes to the oceans, that I think is the best thing we can do. And also looking into what we're doing if you take seafood off and then you suddenly go and eat loads and loads of chickens and pigs and everything else, you're also going to have an effect on the ocean. So that's where the plant-based movement really does sort of overlap with our conservation movement for the oceans.
All right, thank you so much, Gary, for your time, and also for doing what is it that you do, which is putting ocean first. And you are definitely an ocean hero in the eye of ADEX and also the ADEX community. And thank you for all the work that you have done. And of course, we really appreciate it a lot. And thank you so much for being here. So if you have any last sentence you want to give to the ADEX community, please.
Just if anybody knows anybody in Europe, please send them to that Facebook page. It's Stop Fin EU, and just try to get as many people signed up on that. That will make a massive, massive difference.
Thank you so much, Gary. And everybody in Europe, please just do what Gary told you to do. Just sign that bill. And also do stay tuned for the next session where we will be talking about the art of exploration with Vic Valentin in conversation with David Strike at 4:30 p.m. today. All right, thank you so much, Gary, and stay safe, well, and send our love to the children and also the family.
Thank you. Hopefully see you next year.
Yes, hopefully. Bye.
Bye.